President Bola Tinubu last week told state senators of his political party, the All Progressives Congress, that he has earmarked 8 priority areas of development that would engage his administration for the next 4 years. Also last week, the president named a team of 8 special advisors, ostensibly as a preamble to the publication of a more comprehensive list of ministers. Analysts are saying that the president's ability to deliver real-time governance to Nigerians would, in the long run, determine his legacy, regardless of how much time he spends as the nation's #1 citizen. Well, joining us now to have a conversation around this matter is Osita Okechukwu. But before we go into that, let's just have a quick chat about it, Mr. Steve. It's good to have you back. I missed you yesterday.
It's good to be here.
Yes, but I mean, it looks as if, since he's gone, since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has gone into power, he's set the ball rolling. He's done a lot of things since moving into Aso Rock. He's met with the the service chiefs and the NSA. He's, suspended who I'll call now the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele. He had a forum with the governors of the 36 states. He appointed Femi Agbajabiamila as his chief of staff. He made Akume his SGF. He charged representative. I mean, he's done a lot. But now I think what is on the minds on a lot of people is who is going to end up in his cabinet. He has up until, I think he has about 60 days to choose. So that means he has till about the end of next month to fully, appoint the members of his cabinet. What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Steve?
Well, I mean, the president has been impressive. I wouldn't say that it was surprising. A few people think that the impression of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu that they had during the campaigns and all the talks about the health challenges mar his performance in office. But anybody who knows Asiwaju closely will know that one of his strengths is in not giving up. One of his strengths is in, putting everything that he's got into any role, any activity, and of course choosing the right sort of team to work with him. And I think that if you score him along those areas, you see that he has started well. What I always say is that let us applaud what he has done, but of course let us also, as media watchers, as journalists, as analysts, let us also be cautiously optimistic so that we do not get carried away by policies and glittering ideas, because policies are not the problem of Nigeria. The laws are there, the policies are there. It is essentially about the implementation that is important. All
right, then thank you so much. I think that's a good place to put it. But we do have Osita Okechukwu, who is the Director General of the Voice of Nigeria and a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the morning show.
Good morning, and good morning, viewers.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, earlier this week, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu listed 8 priority areas for urgent attention, saying that the task of turning around Nigeria's economy from the age-long status of potential to pragmatic has started with the removal of fuel subsidy and the unification of exchange rates. Now, I want to put it across to you. What would you, if you could give, the president, I know it's really early, but if you could give him a scorecard, what would it be? Do you think he's started well with his agenda, and what would you like to see him continue to do, even as he tackles all the problems that Nigeria is currently facing?
Thank you very much. I'm one of those who is the happiest that President Tinubu has set forth at dawn and set forth well. I happened to be in my village, Eke, in Enugu State, about a week ago. I went to bury one of my elder sisters. And those my traducers who had never thought good of the APC, I could see them happy that Asiwaju had set forth at dawn and also broken the ceiling by pushing aside some of the old roadblocks that were economic development, like the subsidy removal, the unification of the foreign exchange rates, and they are expecting more. But they are happy that Asiwaju could have said, okay, with his inner cabinet, that they should enjoy the dual exchange rate for some while, but he said no. They could have looked into the leakages in the subsidy and said, okay, let us benefit from that for some while, then the next also. So I think that what I could say is that Asiwaju had harvested hugely a national consensus. Hugely, he had also been bold and courageous from the onset. We pray for him, and we think that he had no reason to fail, because he's the one that said that God had been so kind to him. The only remaining agenda was that he had never been to the Aso Rock Villa, the State House, to preside over the country. And that opportunity had come, and they had shown that he actually means well. So I join millions of Nigerians in encouraging him to continue, and also to bear in mind that when we talk in the social science about the consensus theory, we also talk about the conflict theory. There are twin brothers. A consensus says we have done the subsidy removal. What are the palliatives? Short term, medium term, and long term. And I think he has the platform to move into where former President Buhari ended on the agricultural agrarian revolution. He should touch whatever the brand name he might decide to give it. He should visit the Anchor Borrowers program, where the subsistent or smallholder farmers are engaged. He should also look into the Green Imperative project, the one we had as with an agreement with the government of Brazil, where 995 million euro will be used for the importation of all manner of agricultural equipment, with service centers between the government and the private sector and all the local councils of the country, about 774, and the area council in Abuja, and then processing plants that will make sure that no agricultural product will perish. And also the issue of ranching is very important. The Nigerian Governors Forum had already had a proposal on that. I will advise that Mr. President and his team should visit the issue of ranching, because ranching has a very important role to play in trying to stem the herders and farmers' conflict that had taken a new dimension and that is not healthy for the development of the country as well, and the boost of agriculture. And then if you go further as well, you should also know that security is also very important to make agriculture to be worthwhile. Because all President Muhammadu Buhari invested in agriculture was outplayed by insecurity. So he must as well, as quickly as possible, appoint a national security advisor. Yes, I'm happy that he has an experienced hand like Nuhu Ribadu as an advisor. But going by the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic, he needs to have a national security advisor. It's a constitutional matter. If he does so, I will advise him to go through the ranks of all those who retired as generals in the Nigerian Army, because there's a convention, and that convention posits that a national security advisor must have the buy-in of the heads of all the arms, both the police, both civil defense, both the road safety, both the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army itself, and civil defense. And when you talk of those arms, one of the ones that had their greatest respect had always been the Army. That's the convention. So you should look on the capable hands, who have a lot of them who are fit and well trained by the public force, who could leverage and help.
All right, there's a little glitch there that we'll try and solve in a jiffy, but before Mr. Okechukwu comes back, I think, Shaitan, that was making an important point, particularly where it concerns the choice of an NSA. Yes, Nuhu Ribadu, the former EFCC chairman, has been appointed as a special advisor in charge of security matters. But then Mr. Okechukwu is making a valid point about the fact that there's a constitutional provision for the appointment of a national security advisor, and that there's a convention around it. Nuhu Ribadu is a police officer, and I think that he retired at the level of an AIG. He never made it to Inspector General of Police, and the discussion in town is that even if he had been a former Inspector General of Police, it probably wouldn't still satisfy the convention that a lot of people expect, that if you are going to choose your national security advisor, it will have to be somebody of high ranking from the military, and in particular the army, because of the enormity of the job, the demands of the security matters. But hey, who knows? I mean, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as the president, who likes not to be too conventional sometimes, may decide to do it in a different way. But I think that we have Mr. Okechukwu back. Good to have you back, Mr. Okechukwu. You were making a point precisely around the...
Thank you.
Yes, if you can finish on those thoughts, and then I can come in and ask further questions.
I was talking about the import of the National Security Advisor as a constitutional matter, that it had to come from within the top brass of the army, because the convention is that if you have a national security advisor, you like Osita Okechukwu, you make me the national security advisor, and I do not have the buy-in of other arms, you might have unnecessary conflict. That's why I talked about consensus and conflict theory as well. And then we need urgently, now that the ovation is high, to tackle the issue of state police, because it had dawned on everybody that the mutation of asymmetrical insecurity that differed from one region to the other requires a local solution. So if we do so, it will help us to go forward. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Okechukwu, let me come in with two questions, starting from the area of the national security that you mentioned. If Asiwaju, are you saying that we can't have a special advisor, as Asiwaju has appointed Nuhu Ribadu in charge of security, and at the same time have a national security advisor? Do you think that there will be a conflict if two different persons hold those two positions? That is, if we assume that it is not Nuhu Ribadu that will ultimately be made the national security advisor. That's one. Two is to have your thoughts and deep analysis on the things that you say that is endearing people to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's first few weeks in office. And you mentioned clearly the issue of removal of subsidy, the floating of the naira, the unification of the foreign exchange. But then when you applaud him in those areas, are you not basically also exposing the former president that what he was unable to do, or he chose not to do, is what Asiwaju is now doing? Are we therefore saying that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the bite that President Buhari lacked in all of his 8 years? Because if he had gotten all these things done, Asiwaju would not be making all these, he would not be having all these accolades in his first few weeks in office.
Far from that, the truth of the matter is that while the campaign was on, President Tinubu said he's going to do the continuity of Buhari's program. Don't forget that when you go to the subsidy matter, one of the platform that is making it possible for President Tinubu is the PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act, which President Buhari and the 9th National Assembly, kudos to them, in spite of the fact that some people call them rubber stamp, they made the Petroleum Industry Act possible. That was not very easy for some other regimes. I think that's the platform, the foundation President Buhari laid. So it's not good to do a dichotomy. It's just like when I talked about agriculture, we are not going to do a dichotomy either, because foundation have been laid. When we go to infrastructure, the same foundation have been laid. But coming to the National Security Advisor, President Tinubu, going by the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, under Section 5, is vested with the executive powers of the Federation. And he has the power to appoint, even if he wants, 5 advisors on a given item, like an important item like security. But the Constitution is very specific that one of them should be called the National Security Advisor, and goes ahead to state the roles of the National Security Advisor. So if he decides tomorrow to say that Ribadu is the National Security Advisor, so be it. I don't have any objection to that. If he appoints 6 or 5, I don't have objection. It's just like the recent advisors he appointed. When he mentioned Wale Edu that will have his pedigree and antecedents as an advisor, I was saying, wow, why not Minister of Finance? And my good friend, Dela Aleke, I thought he could have come to information to manage the federal government information. But that is the discretion of Mr. President. So I do not query that. But I'm saying that when Ribadu was announced, he wasn't called a National Security Advisor. That's my only point. It's not about the issue that he cannot have 2 advisors on an item and then a substantive constitutional provision like the National Security Advisor. So he is at liberty to have as many advisors as is approved by the National Assembly.
Right, then still talking about, security. Now, less than a week after assuming office, President Bola Tinubu met with the Chief of Defense Staff, Service Chiefs, the Inspector General of Police, and heads of intelligence agencies with a pledge to rejig the entire current security architecture, even pushing, for cross-board information sharing and whatnot. He also mandated that security agencies urgently come up with a blueprint towards addressing pressing security issues. Now, this is not something new. The president should not have to be the one telling security agencies to share information. There's also been a call for a full rejig of the head of, these different security agencies. I would like to know if that would be what you would like to see going forward. Should we give the current security agencies some time to come up with a proper blueprint to defeat terrorism and banditry? Or do you think that going forward, it should just be a full overhaul of the current security implementation strategies that we have in place?
Thank you, my sister. Let me share my little experience in Voice of Nigeria. It's only President Tinubu that, after going through the files and the resume and the bottlenecks or challenges of the security chiefs, that will be in a position to know whether all of them will go, or whether some, or whether few. So if we sit outside, to be sincere with you, unless you have a knowledge or you have gone through the files, or talk to some of the actors, you might not make a fair decision to say, throw the baby away. You might end up throwing the bathwater. So I would not advise that. He is in a better position locally. I remember far back in 1993, when Ashwaji was explaining to us how far he had come in life, we were to have a meeting with them. We were talking about the June 12th. And then late General Shehu Musa Yaradua was still alive. And there was a meeting. Before he came down from upstairs, we were with Ashwaji. And Ashwaji was moving at the couch. And somebody said, why are you always struggling for everything? I just said, struggle is my life. So I think he has an experience. And he had come a long way. But we cannot push him to throw the baby away with the bathwater. I think what Nigeria is gifted with is core brilliant officers. If you make a choice of them without regard to tribe or religion, you take Nigeria to where we're going. But if you start saying, oh, these are not my people, then we're in trouble. I don't think Ashwaji will do that.
All right. I will return briefly to the first question, the first part of the questions that I asked you earlier. But of course, I still have a combo this time around. And I like the fact that you didn't want us to go into any dichotomy between the style of President Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the former President Buhari. But I think that dichotomy is already there. I appreciate that you may not want to be unkind to President Buhari, who appointed you. But then the examples that you cited, as a matter of fact, highlight the fact that there was a failure to deliver. And if you look at the issue of removal of subsidy, for example, yes, PIA was passed in 2021, but PIA stipulated clearly that the subsidy ought to be removed the following year. That was 2022 last year. President Buhari didn't do that. Instead, he pushed it till the time that his successor will be in office. If Ashwaji didn't have the courage to proceed with that, he could have called for, he could have discontinued with that thing. He could have been cowed by the uproar from the Labour Congress, NLC, and every other person saying that, no proper palliative measures were made before the subsidy was removed. Floating the Naira, for example, everybody knew that that's what people have been complaining about. Part of the rot that the Buhari government experienced was because of the anomaly of having two different exchange rates and people benefiting in an unwholesome way, buying dollars at a particular rate and selling, at the other rate in the black market. He didn't do that. That is what President Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done with courage. So there is dichotomy already. So I needed to clear that so that we'll be clear. Even if you add the issue of the suspension of both the CBN governor and the EFCC chairman to it, are we saying that President Buhari was not aware of all these investigations and issues that Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is now complaining of? So I think that you should put that in perspective so that we just don't say because we don't want to be unkind to Buhari, we shouldn't highlight the areas where he failed and where Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu is now getting accolade. Secondly, I would like your thoughts on the manner in which Asari Dokubo, with the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, received at the State House. He made some allegations against the military, and you've been talking about the military and how important that institution is. But then he went ahead to also hold a press conference with the coat of arms behind him at the State House. You are a media stakeholder. What is your understanding of what Asari Dokubo did and the manner in which that press conference was convened?
Let me start by saying once more that government is a continuum and democracy is not a revolution. All the gains made in democracy, both in the advanced democracy of the world, have been incremental. The former President Buhari did not invent TSA, but he implemented it. If you know what the TSA has saved the country, you wouldn't believe that. So I believe sincerely that for us to trust John The best we'll do is what Asiwaju, President Bola Tinubu said, that his government will be continuity. And where there are changes, he will make changes. Where there are additions, he will make additions. That is my own bet on that. I'm not defending President Buhari. If any regime, no matter how perfect, will have his own pros and cons, especially when he has exited. So we don't need to bother ourselves now. Let us give time and know where the foundation he laid is incapable of advancing the better prosperity of the country, and where Asiwaju comes in. And I think that, as I said, that when I was in Enugu, a zone that I never thought good of APC, that I was happy that those my traducers were happy the way Asiwaju is going. I must thank God for that. I must thank Asiwaju for that. So Asiwaju had taken bold steps, had done, and for him to harvest the Nigerian consensus, we support him, especially some of us who are in APC and Nigerian people in general. We support him because don't forget that any step taken conceptually also has its own obstacle of the conflict theorists. Today that NLC had agreed does not mean it has ended. All we need to do is, like some of us is advising, I'm not saying there's a program called the Green Imperative Program that can make us to have modern agricultural equipment, whereby we start exporting. Now the Ukrainian-Russian conflict had exposed a flank that a country like Nigeria can produce grain to feed itself and export to the outside world. But what do we need is mechanized agriculture. And the foundation had been laid. On Asari Dokubo did not say anything different from what we all know. And as I said, you cannot brandish. I don't want to fall into the fallacy of generalization. You paint all the army black, haba. It doesn't make sense. And I don't think Asari also, if he's called tomorrow, to say, please, you're on the ground in the Niger Delta region. Where are those officers? Can you mention them? We'll keep it secret that you are not the one that pointed them out. It might not be that open. And now that President Asiwaju is holding the buck, it's left to him. As I said, we are outside the ring. Unless you go through the files, you will know which officers were excellent officers that have been marginalized. If you remember, there was a time Femi Falana was defending Nigerian officers and soldiers who were dismissed. And Femi Falana pointed out that some of them were unlawfully dismissed. Those officers, their files should be checked. Those who were retired unduly, these are what should be done. If you don't do that, we cannot actually come here and say that Asari Dokubo had opened new vistas. He didn't open any new vista. They showed us pipeline that was being used as a conduit to sell crude. The GMD of NNPC and the chief of defense staff, Jerry Rabo, they were on the ground there showing us that they discovered it. Yes, you might say, why should it be late in the discovery? But that had been done. And today, we have a company that have tendered earlier on in the Federal Executive Council for what they call common shared platform of communication, whereby all the officer and relevant units will be in the know of whatever is happening across the country real time. It failed in the Federal Executive Council. Why it failed, I don't know. Those memos is what President Tinubu needs to go back and bring to bear. And there are meter readers that read oil production. If it's not well read, why was it? So I started a document as far as I'm concerned. We cannot rely on his general branding of the armed forces of the country now.
Okay, so we don't have much time left, but what's on the mind of a lot of Nigerians in probing the rational implementation strategies and the monitoring mechanisms associated with President Tinubu's agenda on fuel subsidy? Now, having successfully quelled the initial protest that greeted the removal of the subsidy policy, the coast is now clear to unveil the economic palliative programs designed to cushion the pains and frustrations of the new fuel pricing regime. Now, the National Economic Council is considering recommendations from the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission to pay 702 billion as cost of living allowance to servants. The council also discussed the possibility of obtaining more funds from the World Bank and London partners to implement the program of compressed natural gas for vehicles in the country. Let's not forget the loan that was already taken from the World Bank just to address this palliative situation. I want to know what your thoughts are on this, because the next meeting is up in, I think tomorrow on the 19th is when the next meeting is supposed to happen. Do you think that this is the best way to handle fuel subsidy? Should it be reverted to the old price like NLC wants? Should there be an increase, or should there be another loan taking out to be able to subset the effects of fuel subsidy?
Thank you very much. I think that I would not advise President Tinubu to do a policy somersault. Rather, he should key into those recommendations. The 702 should be short term. Then there should be medium term, that is more than palliative. That is where mobilization of agricultural capacity comes to bear. Because if we mobilize, Nigeria is so gifted that there is no square kilometer in Nigeria that is not arable and fertile for one crop or the other. And that is what has been looked into already on the Green Imperative Program. And then we need to have ranches. If you go from, I was with in Kano, with the then governor of Kano State, Ganduje, and he showed us his satellite image that he used to monitor the landscape. And he could see a sort of forest, I think they call it Fage forest, from Kano to Saminaka in Kaduna State. We need to harvest those places. It can make a good ranching spot. There are several of them. Those states that volunteer to have ranches, please, let's get them to have ranches so that herders, farmers clashes will come to an end. And we'll have enough meat and we can export. We'll have enough palm oil, we can export. We'll have increase in cocoa production, we'll export. We'll have groundnut and ground oil, sesame seed. You have a lot of crops we cannot mention. And when we talk of restructuring, it should also be understood that the APC has a model already. We have a restructuring piece done by the El-Rufai committee. It could be dusted up. If it's implemented, some of the minerals can go into concurrent lists with the states. Like in Enugu, where I come from, we go into the concurrent list, there'll be a way to use coal to generate electricity and Brexit. Though they will tell you about climate change. But those who are telling you about climate change, coal is also used in the generation of electricity in their countries. So, solutions are there. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. That's what I will advise Ashwaju. He doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. What he needs to go through the files and do the diligent choice within the confines. With the unification of the Naira, there will be other sources of funding coming in. I met a group that were discussing about turning cassava into ethanol. Those should be supported. If you support them, we'll go further than we are. I will get engaged. The palliative cannot be short-term. It must be medium-term and long-term. Otherwise, we run into conflict of discontents. Already we have over 133 million under multidimensional poverty. If you don't take time, we'll have about 100 going to 200 on multidimensional. Then you have crisis in your hand.
All right. Okay, so thank you so very much, Mr. Okechukwu. We would have loved to go much more than this, but of course we are pressed, for time. Thank you so much for joining us on the Morning Show today.